for today was Andrew Scheer's last day in the House of Commons, right? And there was one notable absentee.
Who was missing?
Who was missing? Hello, everyone watching. My name is Roberto Wakefield Cruz, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Canada. I am Roberto from last week, and I'm joined again by Nico Johnson. Say hello, Nico.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. I'm back in Montreal. We're actually in the same office, believe it or not, but for technical reasons, we've decided to move into separate rooms.
Yes, too hard to explain. We had a lot of complaints last week about the sound quality, and Nico, I would actually like to invite you to apologize to the audience for doing that.
I'm deeply sorry. However, I think the full blame goes to the producer, James, for failing to compile the audio properly, which I'm sure is a terribly easy task.
I'm sure he's going to love that.
Yeah.
All right, so we had a great week. We had a really good week on the YouTube channel. You just got done with an interview with a particular leader from a certain official opposition party in a North American country. So who was it, Nico?
It was Andrew Scheer, the milk boy. It was good. I enjoyed our time together. So, for some context, Andrew Scheer has resigned from Parliament. Well, he's resigning as leader of the Conservative Party, and he'll be gone in about 2 weeks, and a new leader will come in to replace him. And it's looking like it's either going to be Peace McKay or Aaron O'Toole or possibly Leslie Lewis, but certainly not Derek Sloan. But anyway, it was his last day in the House of Commons yesterday, and he did a sort of nostalgic look back on his career. And it was great. He was in a good mood, I think. He's going to stay on as an MP, he told me. And I don't know how that dynamic's going to work. I think it's always a bit awkward having an old leader in the House of Commons. But he said some interesting stuff. I think what Andrew Scheer is going to have to come to grips with is the thing he's only going to be remembered for by Canadians is the fact he lost the 2019 election. Yeah. It's harsh, and he probably doesn't like that. But it's just a cruel fact about politics. You don't remember opposition leaders unless they win, you know?
Yeah, that's basically right.
And on top of that, I don't know whether Andrew Scheer will be remembered, despite what you could argue he built the foundation for the Conservatives to defeat Justin Trudeau. But there was no reason he shouldn't have won the last election. And I think that's probably how he's going to be remembered, which is unfortunate, again. But yeah. I think he should have defeated Justin Trudeau. He didn't. He did good work getting Conservatives to the point where they could defeat Justin Trudeau in the next election. But again, it's who cares?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. His legacy, I was going to ask you what you thought his legacy was. It sounds like you kind of just put it out there, aired out any kind of grievances we have with him. But there are grievances to be had. He wasn't a particularly charming man. He didn't really get people excited. He wasn't very good at speaking. He always looked like, he was trying to hide a smile, just kind of like this grin on his face. That was always super weird to look at. I wish him the best. It is going to be kind of weird just seeing him as an MP, but we hope the next leader can probably take over from him where he left off. Because, yeah, he didn't leave the party in a particularly... I mean, the state of the party's okay, but he doesn't have the same kind of...
Here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even now, Andrew Scheer is still the leader, but over the past 2 months, who has been the leader of the Conservative Party? Has it been Andrew Scheer, or has it been a sort of dually-led party by Pierre Poilievre and Michael Barrett? And the thing is, I think the way he was forced out of the party. Let's not, pretend that didn't happen.
Right.
They didn't want him there. No one really wanted him to stay on because he is, unfortunately, and I like the guy, but he's uninspiring. He's not, what a prime minister should look like. And I think Canadians understood that. Mm-hmm. And no matter how bad Justin Trudeau is, if you don't present yourself as an alternative, a viable alternative, you would prefer what you know rather than, the devil you don't, so whatever, however that expression goes. But yeah, so I have to say, I'm not going to look back on the 2019 or 2017 to 2019 period in Conservative politics with any particular fondness.
Right.
In fact, I think it's been a fucking disaster, and I think Andrew Scheer has a lot to answer for that. But you know, he did his best, and most importantly, he seems like a good family man, you know?
Right, yeah. So here's something, you know, obviously our best wishes to Andrew Scheer, hopefully he does well, but, you know, this wouldn't be This Week in Canada if we didn't rip on Trudeau a little bit. So yesterday, the day before today, was Andrew Scheer's last day in the House of Commons, right? And there was one notable absentee.
Who was missing?
Who was missing? And this is going to go right into our next topic that we have jotted down here. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, did not go to the House of Commons. He was on vacation. He's in either Quebec or Ontario. Whether it's Ontario or Quebec is a little foggy. Probably Ontario, it seems like. And he's been on personal days since Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today, Thursday. He's taken personal days. Yeah.
So, and there's a few things to note here. The most important of which is the fact that Canada is currently dealing with a pandemic. Canada is currently dealing with an economic collapse. Justin Trudeau is currently dealing with a pretty significant scandal. So I don't hate the guy for taking a vacation, but I mean, come on. This is the most important summer since Justin Trudeau took office. Yeah. And the fact that he can take 5 days off, and like he doesn't tell us why, he's in a cottage in Ontario somewhere, just playing, you know, on a ski-doo or whatever, and
building sandcastles.
Yeah, building sandcastles. What would happen to a regular Canadian, right, if they didn't turn up for work for 5 days and didn't offer, you know, an excuse? They get fired.
Yeah.
So Pierre Poilievre, you know, Chad, big chin, he understood what was going on, and he said, well, hold on, guys. If he's going to take off 6 days out of 20 working days, or however many it was, then why doesn't his pay get suspended? So Pierre Poilievre is currently trying to get Justin Trudeau's pay suspended until the idiot returns to office.
Yeah. Well, you kind of put it pretty well there. Like, this is a pretty serious time in Canada, right? Our debt is through the roof. We've hit over $1 trillion. People are still unemployed. We're in the middle of a pandemic still, I guess, sort of. It doesn't really seem like it, but the economic effects are still being felt pretty far and wide. And
it's
not just that, but also he's in the middle of a scandal, whole big scandal about government corruption, $900 million. And for him to just kind of fuck off to Ontario, it pisses me off because I can't do that. I mean, I'm still at work and I want to go to Ontario for a little bit, just chill out in the sun. But hang out at a cottage and beat Justin Trudeau. And the amount of like just everyone accepting this for what it is just saying like, yeah, I guess he's just on vacation now. Isn't that kind of annoying?
I think, you know, I'm not one of those people who thinks that politicians, because they're, you know, paid by us and because they represent us, that they shouldn't have any vacations. I think it's actually quite important for them to have time off sometimes.
Sure.
As it is everyone. It helps you out with work in the long term. However, the amount of personal days this guy takes is ridiculous. It's like every week he takes a few days off, it seems. And you have to wonder, what is this guy actually doing? And here's what I think. The fact that a Prime Minister can take days off, you know, let me use a British example, right? Boris Johnson had coronavirus and the government had to force him to stop working. Imagine if Justin Trudeau got coronavirus.
Here's a bit of a conspiracy theory, right? This isn't a massive conspiracy theory, but I check the Trudeau itinerary like every day to see what he's up to, if there's going to be a press conferences. Sometimes it just says private meetings. I call bullshit. I don't think he's doing that. I don't think he's been in a private meeting in years. I bet, or he just does one and then takes the day off. What's so private?
Yeah,
you know?
But you can see in the government, and it's all through Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland was appointed as Deputy Prime Minister and, most importantly, the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. So Canada's a confederation, and it means that she's the person who's working with the provinces, which is probably the most important job the Prime Minister has.
Right.
The fact that that's been distributed or devolved to Chrystia Freeland shows that the Liberal sort of, you know, hierarchy, the Liberal top bosses, they either don't trust Justin Trudeau or they're looking for a way to get him out, to take power off him, to distribute it amongst his government. Chrystia Freeland is clearly more competent than Justin Trudeau is.
Clearly, yeah.
And you know, due to, firstly, he has so many ministers, you have to question, how much work does this guy actually do? He's almost like a figurehead now. He's the good looks, he has all the charm, but when it comes to actual work, I don't think he does much.
No. And could you imagine just being like a liberal backbencher or just like someone from a small town that votes left and just kind of sitting around and just getting into politics for genuinely good reasons, like wanting to help your community. And then this is the guy that's in charge of you and having to sit back and having to put on a public face of support for this guy who clearly no one actually likes.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks is smug, just, and he yells at women or whatever, allegedly. Like he's just mean to women, whatever. Yeah,
Well,
it doesn't seem... Sorry, go ahead.
He does have a habit, a pattern even, of throwing ethnic minority women under buses.
Under the bus. So what are we on now? Number 4? I mean, Jane Philpott isn't a minority, but we have the indigenous one.
She's a
Jody
doctor.
Wills. She's a doctor, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
which is, great.
Sort of.
So there's Jane Philpott, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Obviously, those are the two SNC-Lavalin massive deals there. And now we're moving on to, and I'm sorry if I forget her name right now, Bardish Chagger. Bardish Chagger, who is her lady minister. What is exactly is her position again? I always blank out on this one.
She's the Minister for Diversity, Inclusion, and I think, like, children, which is such a bullshit ministerial title.
Yeah,
So-
hold on. I don't think that exists. Is that a real thing? This is one of those positions that like was created for the gender neutral cabinet, and it would have absolutely no effect if it just disappeared, right?
I bet she does bugger all, which is why I was particularly offended that she was totally thrown under the bus by both Bill Morneau and Justin Trudeau. And, they blamed her for the WE scandal, and she was sort of dragged out of her some ministerial position the other day, brought up in front of Pierre Poilievre, and it looked like she either hadn't had any sleep or was crying.
Or was crying
hours
immediately
beforehand.
before the event. She did not look well. She looked really rattled.
Shell-shocked.
She looked really rattled, and she's fairly young, and I don't think she's used to getting some shit, right? Because she speaks in the House in Parliament all the time. So she's used to getting some flack from the Conservatives, but to go one-on-one, mano-a-mano with like Pierre Poilievre, who is a psychopath, right? Like he doesn't feel sympathy, which is one of my favorite traits in a politician. Is someone who could just go in and get the job done, right? He picked her apart. It was really, it was like watching Floyd Mayweather beat up a baby.
I love Pierre Poilievre. I think he's great. Don't know whether he's a psychopath, but he certainly displays some tendencies.
I was just joking.
The thing about Pierre Poilievre is that he really does go in for the kill. And it could, like anyone, if I went one-on-one with Pierre Poilievre, it could be about my childhood. And he would find, holes in it and make me feel like he'd gaslight me. I wouldn't know what's going on. I would have to, go back and pull out all the documents and send it to him. It would be terrible stuff. So I do feel, I do sort of empathise a little bit with Miss Chagger, because I'm sure that was probably a horrifying experience. She probably has PTSD after that. I would.
Beautiful transition. One of my favorite transitions. Definitely know what just happened there. So we're on to our last topic of the day, which is, we got a big fish to fry here, Nico. I think this is a pretty big deal. I didn't think it was at first, but then once I read more about it, I realized we had a big Quebec fish to fry to deal with here, a big Quebecois fish. So, Nico, fill us in on what happened a little bit. Yves-Francoise Blanchet had some things to say about Justin Trudeau.
He did, and it's a big peppery fish right here. It's a haddock, and I do like my fish with pepper. And but allow me to provide some context before we start. So Yves-Francoise Blanchet seems to be pushing for an election. But the thing about Yves-Francoise Blanchet that we should all take into consideration is the fact that he lets his mouth sort of spew quite a lot. And because of that, he does say some things which he doesn't really mean. But nevertheless, the media really went for it. And you know what? Let's take it at face value. Let's say that he does want an election in the fall. Here's the thing. The NDP literally cannot afford to have an election. They have a leader who isn't particularly good at what he does. He's never
not very liked in Quebec. Not very well liked in Quebec at all for a multitude of reasons that maybe we could put our fingers on. Not racially motivated, but just different reasons. He's not very captivating per se.
Yeah, perhaps there's some other reasons. Who knows? But whatever the case, the NDP do not want an election. So the NDP immediately came out and said, "Oh, this is so silly. Yves-Francoise Blanchet is just throwing a hissy fit. He doesn't want an election. He said basically what I said earlier." But the thing is, the NDP have an active interest in not wanting an election. So do the Conservatives right now. But obviously there'll be a leader incoming, and I don't think the Liberals want an election either, although I think the Liberals probably would win if there was an election in the fall. So It's not going to happen. I think it's pretty unrealistic it's going to happen. The Conservatives will have a new leader at the end of August, and they're going to want some time to give whoever that may be a bit of a wider profile, I guess. It's not going to happen. And on top of that, we're in a pandemic. So it makes things pretty difficult. So I think this really is just another example of the Bloc Quebecois leader and the Bloc Quebecois throwing their toys out the pram, make as much noise as possible to sort of up their approval ratings in Quebec. But here's the thing you have to bear in mind about the Bloc Quebecois. They only care about Quebec, and they do what's best for Quebec. So, it's very strange.
That's the thing, because the more you think about it, the weirder it kind of gets, because what are they really asking for here? I mean, they're calling for an election. They can't win, obviously. They're a federal party that is only in one province, which is, fine. But what is their end game? So it made me wonder, it's like, okay, are the Bloc Quebecois doing this as like an endorsement to the Conservatives? Obviously not. It's not like they're not particularly huge fans of the Conservative Party any more than they are, or any less than they are of the Liberals. So it does seem like it's just a move to stir up the base, get everyone interested again. That's really the Bloc's whole MO, right? They stir up, they do what they need to do to stay relevant to their base. It worked last time. The election went great for them last time. They really got put their foot in the door and took maybe the majority government away from Justin Trudeau. I don't know.
Allow me to give you a theory. So if you look at seats, the Bloc Quebecois did very well in the last election. So even if they had a superb campaign, which perhaps they may have, they can only realistically gain a few more seats than they originally can. They've have a few times, I think twice in Canada's history, or perhaps only once, they were actually the opposition party. But that's because the Conservatives were split in two. It's not going to happen again unless Conservatives split, which again, it seems pretty unrealistic. So we really have to sort of understand, why would Yves-Francoise Blanchet want Trudeau to go? And it's because Trudeau is a Quebecois. He grew up in Montreal. He's a French speaker primarily. And the Quebecois, as a result of Pierre Trudeau and Jean Chrétien, have an idea that French leaders in Ottawa, French prime ministers, are actually harder on Quebec than English Conservatives are. Because English Conservatives sort of walk around the Quebec issue like walking on eggshells. They really don't want to break anything. Whereas Quebecois prime ministers usually have been harsher on Quebec. And perhaps they feel the same way about Trudeau.
And that's our episode for this week. A bit of a crass outro. It's all right. We'll figure it out next week. Hopefully the audio was better this week. We got a lot of complaints. So we do read the comments like we say every week. We read them. We want to consider everything that our audience is telling us. So we fixed the audio. Audio, not an issue anymore. Have any other issues with me personally, with Nico? let us know in the comments. You can here's the thing. Yeah, tell Nico about how much you hate his accent. Those are my favorite comments to read. We get a few of them every week, and it's hilarious. Nico, do you have something to say about that?
Fellas, viewers, let me tell you something. Every time something goes wrong in this podcast, it is always, inevitably, producer James's fault. So if there's an issue, if you don't like Roberto's moustache, blame it on producer James, because he deserves it.
And make sure you leave a like, a comment, subscribe, hit that bell button. Let us know what you want to see in the next episode. If this video gets 1,000 likes, we didn't do it last week, 1,000 likes, I'll shave my mustache. Apparently that's not an incentive. No one seems to care, but it's funny. So anyway, we're going to stick with that. Thanks for watching. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Friday.